I received an email from a listener named Brenna, and with her permission, I'm reading it and answering it on today's episode. Her words capture something so many of you have felt. That discouraging moment when you act in a way that doesn't line up with who you want to be, and you're convinced you must be the exception, the one person that this can't work for. And then I'm going to share something with you that landed in my messages on the very same day from a woman who was once right where Brenna is. You're going to get the before and the after in one episode. Welcome to Binge Eating Breakthrough, the podcast to help you stop feeling out of control around food and build trust with your body. If you've tried everything but still feel stuck, you're not alone. I've been there too. I'm Jane Pilger, and I'm here to help you see binge eating in a new way so you can finally break free. Each week, you'll get the tools and insights to create peace with food and your body. Your breakthrough starts now. Hello, trusted listener. I consider you a trusted listener because I trust that even on your hardest days, even on the days you feel most discouraged, most confused, most convinced that you are somehow different from everyone else who has figured this food thing out, you keep showing up. You keep listening. You keep looking for a different way. And that takes courage, even when it doesn't feel like it. So today's episode is a little different. A listener named Brenna reached out to me by email, and she gave me her full permission to share this, her words, her name, all of it. She actually said that using her real name felt like a good first step towards letting some of this shame go. I love that so much. So Brenna, this is for you. And for everyone listening who has ever felt exactly what you described. All right, so let me read you Brenna's email. She says, "Hello, Jane. I know you are a really busy woman, so if you can't reply to this, it's totally fine. I just needed to tell someone. Self-sabotage really showed up for me this afternoon. I'm sure it was really self-protection, but it didn't make sense at all. I weighed myself today, which I already know is a bad idea. It was the highest number it had been in a very long time, which was very depressing to me. I had just gotten the scale from the basement last week where it had been stored for a couple of months, and it's going right back there today after this. I went to the store for one item, and on the way out, I saw all the Valentine's items that were 80% off, including this heart-shaped box of Oreos. I had eaten a filling breakfast 2 hours earlier, so I did not need any more food. But all of a sudden, my brain insisted I buy these, and then I ate them all in my car in the parking lot. I know what I did wrong to cause this. I have heard you say multiple times in your book, podcasts, and on Zoom that I'm not broken. But I really think I must be the exception to that. Feeling discouraged, Brenna." So I want to just sit with this for a moment. So she says at the end, "I've heard you say I'm not broken, but I really think I must be the exception." How many of you have felt that? It's like you've heard something that makes complete sense, believed it for everyone else, but still kind of in the back of your mind, you're thinking, yeah, maybe not for me. I must be the exception. So Brenna, I want you to know, and you, trusted listener, I want you to know you are not the exception. And today I'm going to show you exactly why Brenna is not the exception. And I'm going to guess many of you are going to be able to see yourself in Brenna's story. So when I replied to her, I asked her a question. I said, "When you say, I know what I did wrong to cause this, what do you think you did wrong? What do you think caused it?" And here's what she said. She said, "I feel like I caused this by weighing myself. I just weighed myself last week for reference, and I should have put the scale back down in the basement where I'm not tempted to weigh. I think that very high number had a big effect on me and subconsciously thought that binging on the Oreos wouldn't even matter since I had already gained so much weight. Maybe if I didn't have that on my mind, I could have just walked on past the 80% off Oreos. Or maybe not. And this is just another way for me to blame myself because I am very good at blaming myself for everything. Do you hear what's happening here? She starts with a specific answer, the scale. And by the end of her response, she's already questioning herself, wondering if she's just looking for something new to blame. She's so practiced at self-blame, she's even starting to second guess her own self-blame. Now, I also want you to remember the number one thing that keeps us in the cycle of binging, of overeating, of showing up with food in ways that we don't like is shame and judgment. And she's very much in shame and judgment here. She was in judgment and shame after she stepped on the scale. She's in shame and judgment after eating the Oreos and even in this interaction. So we want to notice that shame and judgment is here. And if we are in shame and judgment, we can't really get under the hood to see what's going on. But as I was asking her some questions, Brenna actually started getting a little bit curious. She started asking, even if she didn't know that's what she was doing, how does this make sense? Which is one of my favorite questions, one of the most powerful things you can ask yourself after a binge. Now, she did say in her response initially, it doesn't make any sense at all. And it really does. As we kept asking the questions, she was able to see how it makes sense. But I can tell you why she couldn't see it initially. Because she was in shame and judgment. When you ask, what's wrong with me? Why can't I get this right? I won't ever figure this out. These questions, what's wrong with me? Why can't I get this right? Why can't I do better, even though I know better? These questions keep you in shame and judgment. But if you can shift into curiosity and ask the question, how does this make sense? Because it always does. It always makes sense. And when we get curious enough to find out how it makes sense, that is where the real work begins. So let's answer this for Brenna. How does it make sense? She stepped on a scale. She saw a number that felt alarming, maybe frightening even. And that number sent a signal to her nervous system that something was wrong. Her body went into a threat response. Now remember what we know about the brain. When the amygdala senses danger, real or perceived, it activates. And the thinking, reasoning part of the brain starts to go offline. She was not in a calm, regulated state when she walked into that store. And she also told us, yeah, it's very possible that I was thinking subconsciously, not that she realized, but that I was thinking, well, I've already gained so much weight, it probably doesn't even matter. So in that already dysregulated, discouraged, defeated state, she walked past a bright, heart-shaped box of Valentine's Day Oreos at 80% off. Now, I want to pause here really quickly and say, and I told her this too in our email exchange, I have personally eaten my fair share, so many years worth of 80% off Valentine's candy, or Easter candy, or Christmas candy, or insert whatever holiday candy in a car by myself in a parking lot. So I want you all, Brenna, you, and anyone listening, I want you to know this is not a foreign experience. I have talked to so many people who have done this. And most people think they must be the only one. I'm the only one sitting here in a parking lot eating this, highly discounted candy in the car by myself. Everybody's doing it in secret, so nobody realizes just how common it actually is. There is no exception here. Okay, so let's go back to Brenna's story. So what did Brenna's brain do in this moment? She's dysregulated, all the things are going on. Her brain did what brains do when they're overwhelmed. It reached for the quickest, most available, most reliable way to feel better. Food is one of the fastest regulators we have. It works. It works immediately. If you are listening to this podcast, you are familiar with that immediate sensation of relief when you are highly activated, when you eat something like candy that is, has that quick response. And when your nervous system is already sounding the alarm, your brain is going to reach for what works and what has worked repeatedly over time. This isn't weakness. This isn't you being broken. This is your brain doing its job. It's not self-sabotage. It is self-protection. And as I said, Brenna actually already knew this. She wrote it in the very first line of her email. I'm sure it really was self-protection. She knew, she just didn't trust that knowing yet. So what was she actually protecting herself from? I asked her what she felt was getting in the way of having the relationship with food she really wants. And she told me, I feel like it's stress management and general unhappiness with how my life turned out. Food seems to be the only thing that helps to temporarily relieve stress. I'm in an unhappy marriage and I have the daily stress of dealing with my adult son that has high functioning autism. It seems like his favorite hobby is arguing with me about every little thing, and it just wears on me. So there it is. The Oreos in the parking lot were not the problem. They were the dashboard light. They were the signal that something under the hood needed attention. The scale didn't cause the binge. The marriage, the exhaustion, the daily grind of caregiving and conflict, the quiet grief of a life that hasn't turned out the way that she hoped, those are what the binge was responding to. The scale lit the match on a pile of kindling that was already there. And this is why the question of how does this make sense is so much more useful than why can't I do better even when I know better? When Brenna asks, what did I do wrong? She lands on, I weighed myself. I should have known better. This is my fault. When she asks how this makes sense, she finds her way to the truth. I'm carrying something heavy. I have very few places to put it down. And food has been the one reliable exhale in a life that doesn't offer much relief. This is not a character flaw. This is a human being doing the best she can with what she has. Now, a quick word about the scale, because it's worth naming directly. For some people, the scale is a neutral tool. And for others, and it sounds like Brenna is one of them, it is genuinely activating. Seeing a number can trigger a threat response that sends the whole nervous system into alarm. And if that is you, it is not weak or irrational to remove that trigger from your environment. Brenna put that scale back in the basement, which was a wise and self-protective choice. Knowing what activates you and making thoughtful decisions around it is not avoidance. It's self-awareness. Now, if over time you want to do some deeper work around the scale, that would involve understanding what the number on the scale means to you, why it carries so much power, what it would take to loosen that grip. But in the meantime, there is nothing wrong with putting the scale where it can't light the match. And many people find so much freedom in the decision to never weigh themselves again. But here's what I find really extraordinary about Brenna's story, because it does not just end in the parking lot. After she got home, she made the dinner that she had already planned. She didn't restrict. She didn't try to make up for the Oreos. And then that evening, she went to her women's small group at church. And after the meeting, she ate a homemade red velvet cupcake that her group leader had made and enjoyed every single bite, slowly, while chatting with friends. And she wrote to me, I wish I could be that kind of eater 24/7. But Brenna, here's what I want you to know. You already are that kind of eater. You were that kind of eater that same evening. You made dinner. You showed up for your community. You ate a cupcake with pleasure and presence, and you didn't spiral. That is not the behavior of someone who is broken. That is the behavior of someone who is already healing her relationship with food, even when she can't see it yet. And even the fact that she reached out to me to tell me what was going on, that also says a lot towards where she is going. Now, on the very same day that Brenna's email came in, there was a discussion inside our Cultivate group coaching program. And one of the members there, Cindy, she's been a member for several months. She shared something really powerful. And I was in the midst of this email back and forth with Brenna when Cindy's message came through. And I asked Cindy if I could share her story on the podcast as an example of what becomes possible when you stop asking, what's wrong with me? And you start asking, how does this make sense? I love that this all happened on the same day because it was like it was all coming together. Brenna sending me this email, me kind of having this nudge to talk about this on the podcast. And then Cindy's story came in. I was like, yes, this is it. This is going to help really show what is possible. So here is Cindy's story. Cindy says, this is Inside Cultivate. She says, let me tell you a story about a woman who thought she had no discipline. Every Sunday night, she would promise herself, this is the week. I'm locking it down. She'd write strict rules, cut things out, tighten up. And for a few days, she'd feel powerful, controlled, determined, almost superior to her cravings. But by Thursday night, something inside her would start to panic. The rules felt sharp. The tone in her head got harsh. And eventually, another part of her would take over and say, enough. The binge would come. Not because she was weak, but because something inside her felt unsafe. One day, she stopped fighting and got curious. Instead of asking, what's wrong with me? She asked, what are you protecting me from? And she realized the binge wasn't her enemy. It was a protector. It showed up when she felt deprived, lonely, exhausted, or not enough. It wasn't trying to ruin her body. It was trying to regulate her pain. So she changed her definition of discipline. Discipline stopped meaning punishment and started meaning leadership. She ate consistently. She stopped skipping meals to make up for anything. She planned dessert instead of sneaking it. When urges came, she didn't explode or clamp down. She paused and said, we're safe. I'm leading. And something surprising happened. The rebellion softened. Not overnight, not perfectly, but steadily, because her system no longer felt controlled. It felt cared for. Real discipline feels calm, predictable, devoted. It says, I will not abandon myself, not in restriction, not in shame, not in a binge. The goal isn't to crush the part of you that overeats. It's to lead her so well, she no longer has to. When I read that, I loved it. And everybody else in the group did too. It was so inspiring. Here's what happened with her. The rebellion softened. Not because she found more willpower, but not because she finally found the right plan, but because she stopped treating herself like an enemy to be managed and started treating herself like someone worth leading with care. And that is what becomes possible. It doesn't require being a different person. It requires asking different questions. Brenna asked, what did I do wrong? Cindy has learned to ask, what are you protecting me from? One question creates a shame spiral, and the other opens a door. So wherever you are today, if you are sitting in Brenna's seat, discouraged, wondering if you are the exception, or if you are somewhere in the middle, starting to get curious but not sure what to do with what you find, I want to leave you with this. The next time something happens with food that you don't understand, don't start asking what you did wrong. Start asking how it makes sense. Get genuinely curious. What was going on before it happened? What does your nervous system need that it isn't getting? The answers won't always be comfortable, but they will always be more useful than shame. Remember, shame and judgment keep us in the cycle. It's the number one thing. In order to get out of the cycle, we have to get under the hood to see what is causing the lights to come on in the first place. And we do that by putting aside shame and judgment and bringing in curiosity and compassion. And sometimes it's really hard to do that on your own. If you are used to going into shame and judgment, if you have that repeated cycle over and over again, it can be challenging to shift to curiosity and compassion on your own. It can be challenging to see little areas of progress that you might not even see on your own. So if you are ready to work on this with some support, if you need some support to help look at yourself, look at your food behaviors with curiosity and compassion, I have a handful of one-on-one coaching spots open right now. And the way you can start that is just through a breakthrough call. It's just a free conversation. We're going to talk about where you are, what you've tried, and what working together could look like. So I'll put a link to that in the show notes if you want to visit that. And if Cindy's story resonated, if you would rather do this work in a group over time with the kind of support that helps shift out of shame and into curiosity, Cultivate, my group coaching program, opens in late April. So you can get on the wait list now. Again, I'll put another link in the show notes, janepilger.com/cultivate. So you'll be the first to know when the doors open. All right, Brenna, I hope this was helpful. And what I want you to know is that what you experienced makes sense. And you are not the only one who has been there. The fact that you could reach out, that you could name what was happening, that you put the scale back in the basement and kept going on with your day really matters. That is the work, even when it doesn't feel like it. And to everyone else listening, you are not alone in this. The shame can be so loud and try to convince you that you are alone, that you are broken, that you are the exception to the rule. But I promise you, that is just the shame talking. It is not the truth. Others have been exactly where you are and have found their way through. Not by getting it right, but by getting curious. How does this make sense? This is where it starts. All right, that's what I have for you today. I'll see you next week. If you're tired of doing this alone and you want support as you work on your relationship with food, the Binge Eating Breakthrough book experience starts on February 17th. It's 7 weeks working through my book together as a group, meeting live on Tuesdays. It's $49, replays are included, and you don't need to have read the book to join. All the details are at janepilger.com/book-experience.